Aaron, it is great to have you here, and welcome to episode 2 of Mind Games. This is the unfiltered podcast where we dive deep into the minds of standout founders across the globe. My goal for this podcast is to be the opposite of LinkedIn. I want to see what's really going on behind the scenes for people who are really making things happen. So, Aaron, please take a minute or two and introduce yourself. Tell us your story, what you're doing, and how you got there.
Sure. My name is Aaron Zurita, from England originally, from London, and I work mainly as a shadow work consultant. That's the best way of putting it. So I work mainly with the unconscious mind, whether you want to call it unconscious beliefs, limiting beliefs, shadows, right? Anything you want to say to do with that. That's what I work with mainly. So insecurities, fears, not believing in yourself, maybe not even not believing in yourself, but believing something bad about yourself, right? I work primarily with that. And then there's also the conscious coaching on top of that, which is informed by hypnotherapy, shadow work, as well as Buddhist philosophy and thought, and a bunch of other mentors that I kind of work with too. And that forms the two sections of the coaching, mainly unconscious and then conscious coaching together.
I like that you mentioned not believing in yourself. Because, of course, it's a thing lots of people struggle with. But also, I know some of the work that you do, going really deep into the Buddhism, and not believing in yourself can mean some other things for some more advanced practitioners. Like not believing even in the self as a concept.
It gets very confusing. Yeah, and then navigating that as well, which is not really my specialty. It's something which I'm informed on and I can coach definitely the beginning stages of. But from my work with, mutual mentor that we both have, Pierre de Souza, as well as Sister Kante Kema and all those kind of people, right? It's also about realizing that even though there is an absolute truth that there is no self, a lot of the time that can lead to spiritual bypassing, which isn't good at all.
Exactly. So, I like to start by going back into the past, and I'd like you to tell the story of a major challenge you faced in business and how you overcame it. So we can go into the mindsets, how it evolved, what happened. But if you can just
Yeah.
start by telling me at the peak of that battle, what was going on for you internally and externally.
Yeah. Well, I was in Chiang Mai, Thailand, which I know you weren't the biggest fan of, but you can't deny that it's very convenient. It's very nice. It's very beautiful, actually. The surrounding is kind of like right next to a mountain. You got jungle. Thai people are really nice, especially northern Thai people, right? So on the surface, it was all good, and it was comfortable, right? But my business wasn't making that much money. I was every month was kind of like a struggle to find new clients. Um, and I was really enjoying it. However, it was a big challenge because so my mom never earned that much money, right? At all. And what's interesting is she always used to tell me growing up, I am poor and I'm always going to be poor. She was saying that about herself, not about me, right? But when you're young, at least for me, I don't want to, project this on anyone. But when you're young, it's hard to kind of find the boundary between yourself and the parent, right? I'm sure people can kind of relate to that. Um, and if you can't, then lucky you, right? But most people can relate to that. It's hard to find a boundary between those two things because it's like, oh, if my mum's thinking that way, if I'm poor and I'm always going to be poor, then mum's always right about everything. That should be the same for me too, right? So I kind of took that belief on in a way, and comes up a lot in business as well. Because the other thing about business that no one tells you, which seems really obvious until you're living it, is the only way you get paid is if you make that happen. There's no salary, right? So it's also a very insecure way of making money when I already had kind of an insecure attachment style to money, if you can call it that, right? So my biggest challenge there was kind of even just the idea of me making okay money, that was like amazing. And if I tried to kind of shift that up, which is what I'm doing now, working on building my business, going from just making a decent, like an okay, to actually being quite good, right? That was actually it was the premature stages of the beliefs that were blocking that was really present last year in Chiang Mai because it's almost like, oh yeah, I have enough. I don't need to make more, right? So it wasn't necessarily like a survival mode thing because I'm quite good in survival mode for whatever reason. Like I'm pretty comfortable with it in terms of I don't really feel like I need anything more. And also when you live in the right place and you don't actually need much in order to be able to have quite a nice life. But it was actually treating the business like a business and not just like a pastime to pay myself, if that makes sense to you.
That does make sense. And I want to clarify to people, I'm not a Chiang Mai hater by any means. I'm currently based in South America and I just prefer it to Asia. But I'm interested
Nah, we got
how
a bona fide Chiang Mai hater in front of us.
I'm interested how this evolved for you. How did it change? What happened in the end?
Well, I was doing actually, so me and Cameron, especially back then, we were doing a lot of calls with each other. If those of you haven't watched it, then watch Toby's first podcast because you'll know who I'm talking about. It has Cameron in that. And he's like a really good, he's an amazing coach himself. So we would kind of take turns and do shadow work a lot on ourselves. Because I couldn't, because again, didn't have much money. I couldn't afford to pay anyone else. So we did a lot of that. And it's not just necessarily an unconscious issue. It's also what we would call an innocence issue, which is when you have a lack of experience in that area. I always had the lack of experience in making money. I just did kind of odd jobs, like working in a shoe shop during COVID time, which possibly is maybe one of the most boring jobs on the planet I've ever had ever. Um, there was that, and then there was being an appointment setter, which was okay, and then working in a coffee shop and all that kind of stuff. All of this stuff was to supplement what I was trying to do at the time, which was being a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu athlete, which surprise, surprise, doesn't pay anything until you like make it to like the top level, right? So I also just had a lack of experience in general in making more than just the breadline money. Like when I was working in the shoe shop, I was making like £400-500 a month, right? I was living at home. Obviously, that's why I wasn't homeless. But it wasn't like I was making bank or making anything even close to a livable salary. So it was also learning. It was also just getting used to that, basically. And then when you work for yourself, everything has to be self-motivated too, which is fine. But it also means that you kind of have to push yourself a little bit more if you want the business to grow rather than just stay stagnant. Because if you do just stay stagnant in business, anyone who's in business knows that there's no such thing as staying stagnant. If you don't grow, you just go smaller, right? You don't even just stagnate. You just lose opportunities that you would have had if you just worked a little bit more, basically.
Yeah, it's such an interesting balance that so many entrepreneurs face with being happy where you are and celebration and being comfortable, but also this voice in the back of their head saying they need to push and they need to do more, and just trying to figure out which of those voices is even true. Which of those should I lean into? Where should I take this? How do I want to feel on the day to day?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And that answer is different for everyone, I think, which is why, and only you really know what that answer is. You can have a coach kind of tell you and like poke around and maybe help you come to a conclusion. And at a certain stage, that's very functional. But at some point, if you really want true mastery, with anything, this isn't just with business, but with any skill, you have to come to that conclusion yourself.
So, obviously, that was happening in Chiang Mai. I know you're not in Chiang Mai anymore. How are these money beliefs? Did you break through that barrier?
Well, I definitely broke through the barrier of thinking that I was always going to be poor, right? Which I got from my mum. Not like through her fault at all. I mean, you can see from the story that like she was very clear to say that about herself. It's just when you're young, like you can kind of take anything to mean anything, right? And, Toby's also English, even though we don't look like it, right? We are English, right? So he knows about the kind of culture around class, and everyone used to speak about that, but I always used to think it was like nonsense. I always used to think like, oh, bro, that's not true. Until I started living outside of England and I started to realize that, oh, compared to so many other countries, there is definitely a kind of, to some degree, lack of social mobility, and it's not reinforced socially in terms of people are just a lot more cynical, and there's a lot more like I'm a working class, and there's a lot of, especially if you are working class, which my family was. I know everyone in England says, oh yeah, I was working class, right? My family are actually working class, but I know everyone says that as well, so I take it as you will. There's also like a weird pride around being that, right? So it's another level of identification. So if you're identified around being working class, do you think that's going to make you more or less likely to take a pay rise or to really go after something you want, right? I would argue, and you're welcome to disagree with me, that it would make you less likely to do that and just kind of stay where you are because there's that identity which um, is really prevalent to how you grew up. And I understand it as well because when you are kind of living by the breadline or you don't have enough money, all this kind of stuff, then being connected to a greater working class mentality and kind of grinning and bearing it and getting on with it is quite comforting, you know, rather than just being on your own. So I don't begrudge anyone that does that. But looking from the culture, looking outside the culture back in, there definitely was that those kind of interjects for those of you who don't know is kind of like meanings that you've taken on for the environment, right? There definitely was that meaning and those storylines that I came to, which I no longer have anymore, and that was mainly done through unconscious work and experience.
100%. I do think there's a big culture difference between the UK and the US. It seems in the US it is much more encouraged. It's much more in the culture just to strive and to make more money, and it's much more celebrated. One cool example of this I saw, there's a great sales coach called Jeremy Haynes. Shout out to him. And he says something like, "Oh, I love money and I love making loads of money and I love making my clients loads of money and I love being rich." And he has his philanthropic and his selfless desires, but he's very unapologetic about this desire for money. And when I first actually heard this, I was a bit taken aback, and it almost exposed some of my money beliefs. So that's something I aspire towards, to be honest, and I think it's a big thing for entrepreneurs these days to really sort out your money beliefs. Because if you see rich people and you hate them and you're trying to be rich, you're in a bit of a catch-22. So it's something very important to be aware of.
Yeah, yeah, it's very yeah. If you hate rich people and that's what you're trying to be, it's going to be a tough few years ahead of you, for sure. I think it's also because there's also quite rightly a lot of caution because if you hear that like, oh yeah, I love making money, what a lot of people can kind of infer about that, and accurately a lot of the time too, is I like money and I love making money at the expense of everything else, right? We're not saying that, right? Because a lot of people can kind of infer that. It doesn't mean that. It's just like making money. It's just that. It's just making money. If that's what you want to do, go ahead. It's not a big deal either way. Um, but that's definitely a lot. I mean, coming back to my mother, there was definitely a lot of projections on people who made money and people who are rich, for sure.
Awesome. So I have a wild card question for you. I like to keep my guests on their toes a little bit.
Oh, all right, let's go.
So if if me and the audience, if we could see your daily habits and thoughts, what might surprise us most about you?
Probably if it's just like a philosophy of how I'm living, is how I'm not celebrating working hard, celebrating doing tasks or doing all that kind of stuff. The goal is much rather for them just to happen effortlessly and then for them to not be a big deal, right? Because even if I mean, celebration is an important thing, but if you really make something a big deal, even if it's in a positive way, like, oh, I done my meditation, I done this, I done that, I got my work done and all that kind of stuff, and you make that a big deal and you really hype yourself up, it's still, at least in my view, somewhat communicating to yourself that that's something out of the ordinary, right? And it actually requires a lot more effort, at least for me, to continue that rather than it just being something, oh yeah, I just do that, and that's really cool and I can love myself and that's really amazing, right? But I would have had that same reaction to myself whether or not I did the thing. And it doesn't make you less motivated. It doesn't make you less likely to do something because people can think that, which, I can understand why they would think that. It's just, the same way that me breathing doesn't take any effort. I'm going to do all the things I need to do and all the things I want to do. And it's just going to be like breathing. It's just going to be no effort or very little effort, right? And that is much, much more constructive, and what is the word that I'm looking for? Like
Sustainable,
not
perhaps.
repeatability. sustainable, right? Exactly. Than really, really pushing yourself and being in the hustle mode.
I love that perspective, and I love the nuance that you added too. So now we have a bit of a lay of the land. I'd like to fast forward to the present day. What is a battle that you're facing nowadays? Maybe it's a voice that keeps you up at night. Maybe it's a next edge of your business. What is an internal challenge that you're facing in this season of business?
The challenge I'm facing now is just an extension of what I was going through in Chiang Mai in terms of keeping the business growing, making it more professional, making myself more professional as well, right? Because I also got into business because, I mean, the classic thing. I mean, it's not special. Like, you want to be your own boss, you want to have your own freedoms, all this kind of stuff. So it's kind of like a naturally rebellious personality in that sense gets drawn to this kind of work, right? Um, However, it's also about reinstating a lot of not saying that I'm not professional, but like almost like the systems of business to make it more professional and make it more sustainable, right? And yeah, it's like definitely a challenge. In terms of insecurities, I'm quite lucky right now. I don't really have any that's popping up for me at the moment. You know, after like over half a decade, I'm in a plan. It's finally pretty chill, right? So it's not like it just happened overnight. Um, but I'm sure there will be other things coming up. But the main thing is actually getting a more kind of systemic understanding of business.
Yeah, one thing that you mentioned was about this professionalism in business. I wouldn't call it a regret, but I think one thing that would have been cool in my journey is to spend some time in a real high growth startup. Because I did some time in investment banking and in the corporate world, but you see some of these top startups are you really learn how to think and how to work long hours to a high level. I think a lot of new founders come in and be like, "Oh, I want to start my own business, work 30 minutes a day and everything's going to be easy."
Yeah,
But
yeah,
it's
yeah,
such a blind spot because if you're starting your own business, you've got to do everything and you've got to do it well and you've got to
yeah,
do it to a high standard.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, that's a good point. Also, if you're in that startup, you have the security of it not being all on you as well the first time, which isn't a bad idea, right? Because I think you're on a salary or whatever. I mean, obviously that salary will change depending on how it goes. Like, I mean, even me starting my business, I didn't start it from scratch. I worked in a business called Social Sage, and that was kind of a startup, but it also kind of wasn't because
Mm.
it was his own business beforehand, right? And I had a ton of experience from that, right? It's not like I just started from zero, and that was also, run by my mentor now, Pierre de Souza. And I worked as a coach in that. It wasn't all on me. I learned all of the ropes. I was able to fail. I was able to do all of that kind of stuff. And then it naturally ended, and then I naturally had to start something on my own. So I was actually quite fortunate in that respect that I didn't have to start everything from 0 to 1 to 100, right? I was able to work with some of the clients from there, obviously paying a commission. I was able to, um, yeah, get some momentum that way, have a bit of a safety net that way, and learn the ropes. Also see if that lifestyle was actually truly for me as well. You know, and because then imagine it wasn't, I could have been like, oh, cool, now I can just go back to jujitsu or whatever. But I was afforded that opportunity.
So now if we look forward to the future, next 6, 12, 18 months, what's next for you? What's next for your business? And do you see any internal challenges coming with that?
What's next for my business is continuing to grow from Facebook. I can't really say why, but the audience that I had on Facebook is not exactly ideal. So I switched to YouTube. So it's growing the audience on YouTube, excuse me, not Facebook. Growing the audience on YouTube, making sure that I put out really good content. I mean, the content I'm putting out there is basically the same that I would deliver on a one-on-one call anyway. Making sure I get a sustainable kind of lead flow. Because right now, what I have is people who buy from me, they work with me forever, right? They work with me like for ages, right? So I already have a really good base from that. And then also making sure that I charge them the correct amount of money for that and not undercharging as well. So I was able to maximize that, get referrals, all that kind of cool stuff. But now it's about basically getting a more consistent lead flow, basically. That and in terms of internal challenges, I can't really think of anything that's coming up, but I'm sure they will surprise me.
One cool thing about your business, from at least what you've told me, is that you seem to get a client and they just stay forever. And it's almost the opposite of a lot of younger entrepreneurs today. They get a client for 1 month and they leave. So they're constantly just doing acquisition, acquisition, acquisition. But for you, you have this focus on product. You have clients that stay a long time and you really invest into them and build a really strong relationship with them.
Yeah, and that was all from Pierre and Social Sage, right? That's like that's why it's such a good idea if you can. I mean, I kind of fell into that opportunity. I was lucky, right? But if you can to kind of get a sense of that world beforehand and be able to have like be able to be mentored by someone who's like the leader um in that business world, basically, right? It was always about product. And then obviously with the coaching I'm doing with him now, we really dove into that properly. I was able to charge proper amounts of money, just like structure my business properly, basically. And we're still doing work on that. But it's all because of the education I have. Everything that we did was like, oh, whatever you're charging, if you were to charge 10 times that amount of money, would you be comfortable doing that with your delivery? And the answer always has to be yes. If the answer is no, then you're not doing your job, basically, right? So that's how you get um, people who stay on for a long time. And to maybe a younger person who's listening to this, like maybe have you got if and that problem's happening to you, this is coming from someone who's not a business coach, so please take it with a grain of salt, right? Maybe you move too fast, right? Should you really be starting this business? Do you really have the expertise to be selling this product for that amount of money, right? Maybe you just have to lower the price a bit, or do this or do that, right? But if people aren't staying around when they kind of should be, then that's clearly a wake up call to be like, okay, maybe this isn't a problem with my sales and marketing. Maybe this is a problem with my product and the actual service that I'm delivering.
One beautiful thing I learned from Pierre, and shout out to Pierre, if anybody listening to this wants to get in touch with him, just let me know. I believe he's currently working with coaches and closers, but he's got a bit of a brutal waiting list, so you may be waiting a little while. One thing I learned from him, though, was his principle of whoever cares the most wins, which I think is a great holistic and sustainable way to really run a business that helps people and it helps yourself too. So before we wrap things up, I like to leave all of the audience with one thing they can take away from this episode. So I'd like to ask you for a recommendation. And this recommendation can be anything. It can be a new desk you just bought. It can be an Airbnb you stayed in, a country you like. It can be a movie, a song, a YouTube video, whatever you'd like. So if you have one recommendation for us, please feel free to
Mate, I've
share.
got so many.
You just get one.
Recommendation, man. Recommendation. My recommendation, if you're of that mindset, you can always travel to other countries. It's much more doable and much less expensive than you would think, right? I know at least when I was younger and still now, I really wanted to travel, but I put so many objections in front of myself, right? But to be able to experience other cultures and live with other cultures and be in that culture and realize how you were shaped by your own culture and how you can actually change your personality depending on realizing that that's very powerful. And for me, it was always the price objection. So I would say the recommendation I would have is always kind of take the risk and just go and just do that thing.
I love that. The recommendation is to travel. Okay, and now as we end things here, I'd like to give you the floor for a minute or two. Maybe there's somebody you're looking to hire, maybe a closer or a setter. Maybe there's a certain type of person you'd like to connect with, maybe other coaches, I don't know. Or maybe you can just let us know where to find you. You have a minute or two, the floor is yours to speak to my audience.
Well, thank you for Toby having me on. What I just say is, if you're interested in the work I do, I have a YouTube channel called Unconscious Flow, which you're welcome to look at there. It has I don't hold anything back. It's got all of my content for free. basically. The same stuff that I would give to a paying one-on-one client. Now, it's obviously different because I'm not speaking to you, but the content is the same, right? The content is the same. I don't hold back on anything like that. So if you want to get in touch with me, you can get in touch with me there, and you can set up a call through my link there. And the main people that channel is for is the people that I work with. I'm passionate at working with people who have been in self-development, meditation, spirituality therapy, maybe for a few years, seen some kind of result from it, but it hasn't quite fully clicked. The transformation hasn't fully clicked. What they were promised at the beginning has not been fully delivered, and they don't know why. Those are the types of people that channel is for, and what my work is for.
Perfect. I'll tag you below. Please, everybody, go check out his YouTube. Give him
Thank
a
you, sir.
subscribe. It'll be worth your time. And Aaron, thank you for joining me. That's it for episode 2 of Mind Games, and I'll catch you all next
Thank you,
time.
Toby.
Bye-bye.